Good afternoon, this is Jeff at Sewer Tech Northwest. We are at 11412 Southwest Woodley Heights Court here in Portland. We are located down in the crawl space. I describe everything as if you're standing in the street facing the front of the house. Alright, bear with me, I'm trying to get set up here. It's kind of a tight spot. Anyway, describe everything as if you're standing in the street facing the front of the home. Where the line exits out of the house is at the front right corner. It goes out directly underneath the vent at the front of the house, but right at the front right corner, so just behind the pond area. Water is currently running. We're going to zero out at the base of the stack here once we drop down all the way to the bottom. Alright, this will be our 0 point. And the line transitions to 4-inch pipe right as it drops down to the ground level of the crawl space. You've actually got another clean out at the base of this thing too. Hey, checking the overall condition, serviceability of the sanitary sewer line. Water is running. Alright, we are underwater. Sorry, the visual on that, it almost looked like the camera was ramping kind of an uphill trajectory. So you've definitely got some standing water in here. Now this is just... the amount of standing water is hard to tell. I've been doing this for 13 years. This line looks like it is going like almost straight up. Like reverse grade doesn't even hardly feel like the terminology to use. It feels like we are going... It's hard to tell though right now. The amount of water we've got in the line. We're going to have to take another look at that when the line drains out at the end. You've got enough standing water and just debris there that just visually it's tricky to look at. But we just transitioned there over to concrete pipe. Also appears to be 4-inch diameter. You've got some pretty significant bellying going on there though, unfortunately. And that is one of the tricky things about these, when a line goes out the front on these hillsides like this. You're coming out at such an incredible depth already. If you don't grade that line right and bed it like no tomorrow, really compact the soil. I mean, this line here as it exits the house, I mean, from this foundation bent down to here has got to be, you're probably 8 feet, if not deeper than that, at the foundation wall. It's a lot of weight sitting on the line. Alright, there's the main lateral connection at about 86 feet out. So we're going to go do some locates really quick here just to verify where the line terminates. And then we will pull back here in just a moment and have a better look at everything. The concrete pipe section of the line drains off very nicely. We'll take another look at that. It's mostly the ABS pipe that's concerning. Alright, so I just walked up and down the street here. I cannot even pick up a weak locate signal. And I have a sneaking suspicion it's due to the depth of the line. I did not have any luck, not even with a weak signal, walking up and down the street directly in line with where the manholes are. So I'm hoping we pull back in here closer, I can pick up some kind of locate. But this is one of those lines that's deep enough, it may require a different type of locating system to pick up on it. Generally speaking, my locator starts cutting out when it's around 13 feet or so deep, 14 feet. Anyway, the concrete stub here coming off the main graded very nicely and has stayed put very well. And the concrete's still in good shape. It's still quite smooth, very little wear. And it behooves you nowadays, especially when you're talking about lines that are at this depth, to keep an eye. The first thing that wears out, and I'm not saying this is going to happen tomorrow. If you're going to be in this house a long time, it's a good idea to rescope a line like this every 2-3 years to keep an eye on it. The first place that starts to wear out in concrete pipe, generally speaking, are the pipe joints. They're generally filled up with pipe grout, and after years of expansion, contraction of the soil, and just an age, the grout will often start to wear out. And when your joints start to be exposed to the ground, your first signs of it is you'll start to get a big dark ring around your pipe joints. Sometimes you'll get dirt migrating through. If you start to see signs of that, that's where you really want to get on it. Liner, which is a trenchless repair system. Like this, to avoid digging that road apart. And again, this is not tomorrow. This is looking down the road a ways. But if this is a home, like a forever type house you're going to be in for the next 10, 15, 20 years, it's a good idea to do this. If you start to see signs that the joints are failing, that's when you want to get on that. On a line like this, if it's at the depth that I think it is, the cost difference between doing a liner on that concrete versus digging it up, I mean, we're talking light years difference. I mean, sometimes it's the difference between, $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 versus $30,000. Depending on the depths we're working with here. I'm still not sure how deep it is, but given how deep we are at the foundation wall, it's got to be down there quite a ways. So everything from the concrete transition out grades off beautifully, very nicely off that direction here. Take a look at the ABS pipe now and see how we're looking here. There was a lot of debris that was just floating in the water. It looks like you've got some pretty significant standing water, at least it did on the advance out anyway. And that standing water persists right up to the transition. At that point it's relatively minor, but when you're correcting a belly you have to fix the entirety of it, not just part of it, or you won't fix it at all. You got to be able to chase that grade all the way out. So yeah, you've got the line here is it's fully submerged. Once you get back about whatever it was, 5 or 8 feet back from the transition joint, the line is just fully submerged. You've got 4 inches of standing water in a 4-inch line there, and that persists all the way back into the crawl space. That standing water begins right at the base of the vertical stack here. So I'm gonna try and go locate here and see where we are. Alright, so I can get a locate here, but it's still not a good one. The locate should be considered rough. Where we are right now is sitting right in front of the for sale signpost. At least that's what the locator is indicating. My depths here are very jumpy. I'm getting depths ranging from 10 to 12 feet, which would not surprise me. But it needs to be relocated. That's basically for reference only. You need a stronger locating system than I've got here to get good accurate depths on that. Anyway, when I first ran through here, I've been doing this 13 years. I've cambered about 24 or 5,000 sewer lines at this point, and now that we've stirred the sediment up, we don't get as good of a view. That first shot out there, I mean, the line looked like it was ramping upward at like a 45-degree angle. It could have been somewhat of a visual illusion, the way that the standing water is relative to where the buildup was occurring. You had ridges of buildup when you get a lot of standing water in a line, you'll often get debris that actually gets hung up at the top of the standing water, and it looks like the ridges that often build up in the flow line. So it might have been why it visually kind of appeared that way, but here it looked like it was just going straight uphill. So one of the things to look into here, and I would highly recommend looking into it when you're talking digging depths like this, especially with a pond out front like that, is to look into the prospect of an ejector pump. So right now my camera is, I flipped the image over so right now my camera is oriented. I mean, you can see that, how hard it's ramping up. I mean, we're just going straight uphill right now. I mean, that right there is it looks like we're about to go up a vertical stack. It's ramping up so hard. I honestly am not entirely sure how this thing functions. It looks like it's functioning on purely hydraulic pressure alone. That's one of the most significant, in 13 years, that has got to be one of the most significant reverse grades I've ever seen. Like someone didn't even try to grade the line. They just, I don't know what happened there. And or it almost looks like they configured it like it was going to have a pump on it. Although pumps don't eject through 4-inch pipe, they generally eject through a 2-inch pipe. And sometimes, I've seen it done before, it often requires some level of cutting and digging. Sometimes you can run a 2-inch ejector pipe already exists and avoid a lot of digging altogether. But that right there, I mean, it looks like we are going almost straight up into the air. Right as we go to that foundation wall, you can see how hard the line is ramping upwards there. So anyway, I'm going to try and see if I can get some kind of depth. With the camera oriented the way it is right now, almost straight up and down, that usually throws my locator off significantly. I'll see if I can get something here. Otherwise, I would just be getting a repair company out here to come take a look and see how best to rectify this. But I would really consider looking into an ejector pump on something like this. It's not like it's super cheap, but in this case, it may be a lot less headaches than trying to dig everything up. The downside with an ejector system is the fact, and you could potentially do a combination here. It would require probably cutting a hole through the foundation wall and running out the upper floor gravity fed and the bottom floor on a pump. That, realistically looking at this, that feels like how this really should have been done to begin with. I'm not sure why they did it in this fashion, but it would have been simpler just to simply run the upper floor out, you know, just below ground level like your average sewer line, and everything on the basement floor you put on an ejector and eject it upward until it hits a gravity fed part of the line. That way, if the power ever goes out, your entire home is not dependent upon power, only the basement floor is. So that's the big downside with whole home ejectors. They're not ideal in that fashion, but there's a way to do this where you, at least from what I can tell here, to do a combination of the two. But to do that also is going to require you're redoing the line out front. There's really no other way to do that to an extent. But that's up to the repair guys to figure out. I'm just trying to throw suggestions out here that, you know, I'm hoping helps simplify this process. All right, so right here, I think at this point, I think we're best just to have repair companies come out here and take a look at this. I'm having a really hard time getting depths on this. Right now, the line's running underneath the pond, which I can't stick my locator wand down into that water. There's just very little spots out here I can even hardly get accurate locates to begin with. So I think it makes more sense just to get a repair company on this. I highly recommend a repair to correct the line here from essentially the 0 point out to the transition to concrete pipe. You know, and I would look into the prospect of doing a whole home ejector versus, you know, either regrading it completely the way it currently in its current configuration versus the pump versus doing kind of a split system where you've got gravity and a pump to see what kind of shakes out the best and makes the most sense here. From the looks of it, it looks like there is a backflow installed, although Yeah, that looks like a backflow flapper right there. As far as I can tell, that's been pulled out. This looks like a backflow assembly. So anyway, you can see what I mean here. This comes down from the, we're looking up at the floor right now. It drops all the way down. You might be able to attain a lot more grade if you punch this thing out of the house at a shallower depth, but you would have to then pump this downstairs stuff up to that point to where it's gravity fed. That way you can gain some footage back there and hopefully, you know, at least have a portion of this thing gravity fed. If you went the route of the whole home ejection system, which really is probably a simpler task in this case, you might be able to utilize the pipe that's already there by feeding a line through it. The big thing when you've got a whole home ejector system is you want to be able to understand. The power here does not go out all the time. It's not going to be a concern constantly, but if it ever does, you just want to make sure you have a generator and know how to use it. If you go that route, that way you can plug into that and you still at least have functioning plumbing, during that inconvenience. So I highly recommend a rescope after anything is completed. If you went like a pump system route and did a whole home ejector, there's not a lot there you can actually scope. But if you end up regrading the sewer line into an all gravity fed system or a partially gravity fed system, you want to rescope anything that's recently been repaired, and you want to do that when the trench is closed, not when it's open, or you're not going to catch any settling problems. All that stuff happens when you bury the line under a whole bunch of dirt.